Hello, I'm Ben Selwyn, partner of Fifth Quadrant, and welcome to this webinar where we will be talking about the world of bill payments. To quickly introduce Fifth Quadrant, we're an independent market research agency based in Sydney, spend a lot of time looking at the latest trends and insights around consumer and merchant behaviours. We've been working with PayPal for a number of years, both within Australia and overseas. And so it's a pleasure in this session to be discussing some key insights from a research study commissioned by PayPal and Glider, looking at consumer attitudes and behaviours when it comes to bill payments and their expectations of their service providers. In this session, we're going to cover three main areas. So firstly, looking at the consumer survey results, some of the key issues that emerged there. Then we'll talk about the challenges for billers in delivering to consumer expectations and what they can do to overcome these. And then finally, we'll look at some of the emerging trends that will impact this space in the years ahead. Joining me today are Simon Banks, Managing Director, PayPal Australia.
Hi, Ben.
Thank you. And Sean Dobbins, CEO and founder of Glider.
Hey, Ben. Great to be here.
Thank you. Thanks both for taking the time. Simon, I'm going to start with you to set the scene a little. Please tell us briefly why you and Glider combined forces to do this piece of research.
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Great question. So, as you know, PayPal's worked for many years with Fifth Quadrant, looking at what we call our e-commerce index. You know, PayPal represents 9.5 million active accounts in Australia, so we are a significant player in Australia from a consumer perspective. And we've always been very focused on what the real trends are that help retailers in particular look at what consumers are looking for when they're shopping. And they keep coming back to key themes like they want a mobile experience, or they want to remove friction, or trust and safety is super important. But the more work we've done in the billing industry, whether it be with telcos or insurance companies or utilities, we've tried to sort of take a lens here to say, well, what does all this mean and what do digital payments mean in the billing industry? Clearly in retail, there's this real focus on conversion. Like, how do I convert eyeballs or people on my browser into a sale? That's not as relevant in the billing industry. But when I think about the pressure that Australian consumers are under, and when I think about the desire for customer loyalty and consumers that are under pressure shopping around for better deals, we thought there was a really interesting piece of work to look at what consumers are looking for when they pay bills, why they pay them, what is the real role of a digital payment in bill payment? How can we both improve collections, like really operationally help billers improve collections, but also creating customer loyalty? Like, how do we unpack what consumers really want, what's driving them to change, and what are the sorts of strategies that a biller could use when they're actually dealing with consumers? So we're very excited about this piece of research.
Thank you, Simon, and completely agree. I think that's something that, as we'll see as we go through, that whilst the billing side of the equation is incredibly important, maybe not quite as far progressed as some other areas of commerce. Sean, what about you? Billing, obviously a topic that is incredibly important to yourself, but why was this research something that was key to conduct?
Yeah, so, the thing about bills is, everyone has to pay them, right? Largely, no one enjoys paying a bill, and at times it can be really stressful for the person that's paying that bill. And so on the flip side of that, for a biller as an organisation, it's very expensive to chase payment, and it's time consuming, right? And so Glider's on a mission to make the bill payment experience better for consumers and organizations. When we started looking around for data and insights to inform our own innovation roadmap, we really couldn't find too much out there. And so we wanted to go wide on this and really try and capture, some insights from all sides of the market. And, we see this as a really critical tool for Glider to not only enhance our own offerings, but to continue delivering that value to our customers and our partner ecosystem as well. So echoing Simon's thoughts here, like it really is exciting to bring this to life. we're appreciative of the work that Fifth Quadrant's done here, and we think we've got some really great insights. And there's really some valuable tools here that we're going to be able to use in a tangible way.
No, thank you. And obviously from our side, a pleasure to be a part of it, and particularly something like this where it was, as you say, a bit less discussion in the in the general community. So that's been great. If we jump into the first section, so as I said, looking at consumer needs and expectations first up, and we can see in the data that the consumers we spoke to have some pretty set preferences and expectations when it comes to billing. Sean, I think we saw that a bit over 2/3, 68% of them currently pay bills manually, so not using direct debit. The data tells us this is because they want control. Is that a bad thing? Do we want to change that behavior, or are we trying to enable it in a more productive way?
Yeah, for sure. For a long time, businesses have seen the nirvana of, setting up consumers to automatically just, take the payment out of their bank account on a weekly, fortnightly, monthly, whatever that basis might be. That's great for the organisation, but from a consumer's perspective, it's fraught with, challenges around control. And ultimately, like if you don't have that money in the bank account as one reason why someone might not want to do it, you're going to be charged by the bank a dishonor fee, or there's going to be other things that are reasons why you're not going to want to set and forget. I guess beyond setting up a way for an organisation to enable a better experience, you can see that there's a desire there for, whilst they might want to not set and forget, they do want a really good experience still, right? Like 53% saying they've got a desire for one-click bill payments. Others in the preferences around the channels, they might want to receive a reminder or receive their bill to make that payment. Beyond that, there might be things like flexibility in breaking the big payments down into installments, paying for, or whatever it might be. And so ultimately, whilst many have got best intentions to pay bills on time, they do want to feel like they're in control of how their finances are being ultimately juggled, in many ways today with the current climate that we're in.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a key point, is understanding, the environment and what it means for the individual. I think also, as you're talking to there, a lot of this, what we're seeing here, different people have different needs, different expectations. Some of that will be down to their age, but also some of it will just be down to their situation and the pressures they're facing at this moment in time.
Sure. Yeah, 100%. We all know that it's a very well understood dynamic in the current climate today that there's a lot of despair and concern around people's finances. And I think as a biller organisation, anything you can be doing to adapt to make their life easier, understanding a bill needs to be paid, but trying to give them the ability and more flexibility in the way that they're able to resolve that payment certainly can make a big difference between a bill being paid on time and it being ignored or being paid late. And sometimes there's simple things that can be done, just things like time of day, location, channel, etc. But ultimately, choice and flexibility is hugely important for, I think, most people today. It doesn't matter how old they are.
And we'll come back to that point of late payments a little bit further on, but yeah, absolutely agree. And that choice and control. Already seeing the same language coming through, and it's about putting it back in their hands. Simon, building on that point around the needs of different people, we saw some clear differences in terms of where bill payments sit for different generations. Our older consumers seem to view them as very much a specific activity that they do at a point in time, that they put time aside for, and that sits by itself. Whereas for younger consumers, they're just part of life. It's something that you're doing more on the go. How do we need to cater for these generational differences?
Yeah, so I think the research, I think this is probably one of the most interesting parts of the research, which is how do you start to look at, as we all know, everyone pays bills. As Sean said, no one likes to pay them. It's not like a retail purchase, something you have to do. And clearly, the boomer category, these are people who probably have more time on their hands. And you can sort of see through this research here they're more likely to sit down at a set time and go, right, here's all my bills I have to pay. Here's my monthly bill cycle or something like that. Now, intuitively, we kind of know that the younger people get, or the more you move towards Gen Y and Gen Z, that people are now mixing up bill payment as part of their everyday activity and everyday life. I mean, I won't call out all the different places where people pay bills. Read that in the research, and there's some quite interesting places people pay them. But the further you move to the left here, you start to see this concept of multitasking, and I think the term we use in Gen Z is sort of multi-screening. If you've got teenagers like I do, you'll start to see that people are kind of interspersing bill payment with what they're doing in their daily lives, whether it be eating their dinner, eating their breakfast, lying in bed. The fact that people are actually paying bills while they're at work. And so the door I would sort of open here, and we talk about one-click payment, is billers really only have these people's attention for a very limited span of time, and it's very different to a boomer that can set time to do it. But if it's while I'm on the train, or while I'm eating my lunch or my dinner, or doing something else, I've got someone's interest in paying the bill, or someone's acknowledging that they need to pay it right now. How do I actually leverage that opportunity? I've kind of got this really small window where I have to be able to take that person's attention and turn that into a completed bill payment, which really comes back to that whole concept that Sean said of, the nirvana of a one-click payment, or a payment. If I have to go and get a bill, if I have to get my wallet, if I have to go and find a piece of paper, then it's just really not going to happen. So I thought this part of the research, was really insightful about how different generations and different types of people actually approach where they pay their bills. And there's a real signpost here for, I think, what billers need to be focused on.
Yeah, no, definitely. Couldn't agree more. And I mean, like you say, it's one of those slides that you look at it and it tells the story without, without needing too much more beyond that you can just see how these shifts are. I do think, the key bit for me, and exactly as you were alluding to there, that once you've got people who are paying bills on the go, who are lying in bed at the start or end of the day, or really it is this flexibility that they require, then you've also got to have that ability to deliver it across different devices. The question there, and almost despite the generational differences, I guess the importance of mobile within that.
Yeah, so I think, clearly, again, the younger the generations are, the more they basically gravitate to mobile experiences. I think I think that's fairly obvious there, but even the older generations in their own mind want a more optimized bill payment. And I think to just sort of explain why this is important, and we'll talk about late payment later, but again, we sort of make the comment that having a mobile optimized experience matters. When we talk about late payment, something like 74% of Gen Z are paying bills late, right? And so what we try to do later in the research is sort of unpack why that might be. But when we start to talk about an experience that's not mobile optimized, and we're talking about an experience that a Gen Z can't consume while they're doing something else, you start to see potentially that correlation with these are also people that typically pay late. Is it because they can't afford to, or is it also because we haven't served up the bill in a way that they can action it? And I know we're going to talk about late payment in a little bit, but I thought, one of the really important so what's of the research is this generation that expects more, or wants more on the mobile, or wants it simpler and wants to be able to pay their bill while they're doing something else, happens to also be the category that pays the latest. And I think that's something that's quite interesting when you look at the generations.
Yeah, definitely. And there's obviously a connection there. There's obviously a linkage between those. And it's, okay, how do we support through? Coming back to the mobile optimization piece, though, and as can be seen on the slide that's up here, putting boomers probably to one side, other than that, across our generations, what we can see holds true is the importance of mobile. Overall, we have just over 2/3 of consumers who say they use mobile devices to pay bills. We have just under 2/3 who say that it is important that businesses offer mobile optimized bill payments. Now, the reason I find this interesting is we spend a lot of time talking about AI, we talk about hyper-personalization. There are these trends in commerce generally, but to a certain, it feels like we take mobile optimization for granted, that businesses have solved for mobile, but these results suggest that's not the case. Sean, what are your thoughts on that issue?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, looking at particularly my background, I mean, I've been working in mobile sort of experiences and creation for as part of 15 odd years. And I think to a degree, we also, as a business, were in Glider, I guess, a little surprised by this insight, but we kind of just take it somewhat for granted that businesses have this covered. I think in the billing environment, potentially it's not seen as being that important. Clearly, this data tells us otherwise. And we also see whenever we have created an experience that does optimize in that mobile context, we see huge uplift in conversions, right? And so there's definitely the demand there. So, for me, there's also a reflect on what Simon mentioned about multi-screening. There was for a while data talking about consumers starting a task, whether it be researching a holiday or whatever, on one device and then completing it on another. I actually think a lot of that is due to an organisation not having the ability to resolve a task such as paying a bill on that device easily, right? So they were being forced onto other screens as well. So the desire is there to receive your bill and pay it quickly on the device the channel that you're interacting on. And I think, as I said, this data is really insightful from that front. Yeah, I think, as I said, mobile isn't set and forget. It's not like it's one and done. It's something that you'll continually need to optimize for and continue looking at the data to sort of bring that back into your strategies to sort of inform, the ways that you can be realizing some of those gains. So it can be incremental, but certainly, giving it some thought and I guess to a degree, thinking about that biller experience in an e-com sort of environment, as a checkout experience, like how can we optimize that to make it easy for that customer to pay their bill?
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, that piece again comes back to the question at the very beginning. And from what you're saying there, it sounds like it is more about, okay, maybe billing's been a bit behind the curve. And so how can we improve the technology and the services and the support there in order to make life easier for the customer? So it's not about changing the customer, it's about better delivering to what they need.
100%. Yep. I mean, it's in the design world, they call that human-centered design, right? Like building your organization around the needs of the customer versus the way that your business wants to be structured and operates.
Excellent. And again, I mean, a point there, and I will ask you again about some of those trends and some of those innovations that are coming through a little bit later on. I mean, for now, and I mean, sticking with the consumer side of things, as Simon, as you mentioned early on, cost of living pressure is getting worse. We're seeing that across the economy. We've just published latest report from our consumer insights tracker, our research there, and I think that really highlighted the significant hardships facing a lot of Australians. 37% of the consumers we spoke to are struggling to meet household expenses. 10% are unable to pay all their bills. Obviously, very topical for the conversation we're having today, particularly Gen X. And I mean, those sort of family life stages there, and a lot of the pressure that comes in terms of big ticket items like mortgages and schooling, and then managing all the other bits around the edges. But the real issue and the challenge for us is that it doesn't, at this moment in time, there's no expectation amongst consumers that the cost of living crisis will ease. Almost 2/3 think that it's going to get worse over the next 12 months. When we're talking about energy bills, your utilities, your fuel, I mean, day-to-day essentials like groceries, that makes it incredibly challenging. And so that comes back to your point before, Simon, about consumers paying bills late. Affordability is clearly an issue. So how can we support people to give them certainty about what they owe, when it's due, and make it as easy as possible for them to,
Yeah, it's a great point. I think if you look at the research, and by the way, I encourage everybody, listening to download this paper, something like 62% of the reasons for late payments fall into this category of there's financial reasons why, the consumer didn't pay on time. And we'll come back to that in a second. Another 47% kind of said that they forgot the bill. But to your question around consumer pressure, let's talk about that. So what we're seeing in the market increasingly is consumers wanting to fund a payment different ways to meet specific cycles around what they're doing. So they might pay, an education bill out of their bank account or with their debit card. They might need to put, an energy bill on a credit card. Or as an example, some customers, based on what day of the month they're paid, might want to actually leverage something like a buy now, pay later offering, which is to be able to split the payment over 2 or 3 installments. So I think what we're starting to see in the market, is that concept that cash flow is becoming really important, and that people, are going to use their bank account for certain things when they can predict it. They're going to want to use a credit card, or a debit card for other things. But then having other options like, buy now, pay later, or one of these types of installment payment options is something that potentially can actually alleviate a lot of pressure for a consumer sort of dealing with, how they manage their budgeting and their cash flow. And I think go back to the start of the research where Sean was talking about the preference for the consumer to be in control. I think that's more important than ever, that the set and forget, debit my bank account, in the current environment we're in, consumers really want to be able to, manage their cash flow against what they have due and when it falls due. I think it's a really important consideration, for billers in terms of those types of choices that they provide around how a customer funds a payment, especially in the current environment.
No, definitely couldn't agree more with that. Sean, from your side, different perspective, probably.
Yeah, I had a couple of things for sure. So, to Simon's point, people want flexibility and I guess the ability to make a payment. Everyone's different, right? Like you're going to have some people are going to get paid weekly, some will get paid fortnightly, some monthly. If you can get a bill closer to the time when you're getting paid, as an example, so we send out your bill is due on this date because that's how our organisation operates. We could ask them, like, when do you get paid? Can we try and bring this payment to you the day after you're paid, right? Because you might forget otherwise, and then use up all your finances, the bill comes and you don't have enough money, right? So there's little things that we could be doing to try and help a customer pay their bill more efficiently. And that might just be moving the date, as one example. But, the data tells us 66% want reminders. So they want to be able to receive, a payment or a bill payment at the right time, on the right channel with the right message. And so that message is going to change contextually based on, the nature of the bill. But giving them that flexibility and choice and understanding that, to my earlier point, like everyone's a bill payer and there's a really wide kind of range of demographics out there and sort of characteristics of that bill payer. So trying to create a strategy, that thinks about everyone on an individual basis versus a one size fits all, I think is the really key and important piece here. So trying to use some of the insights to inform this strategy about how we can start segmenting our customer base and talking to them and picking up on those unique types of preferences around the way that they need to be able to do the right thing, because most people want to pay their bill, right? Like they don't want to not be able to pay it, but they're just dealing with stuff, lots of different things that they need to juggle in their daily lives, whether that's being busy, not having enough money, all sorts of different reasons.
No, definitely. I mean, that a lot of what you say there cuts through really personally for me. I'm horrible at bill payments. There's actually one of my providers in particular that the only way I know that I've got a bill overdue with them is because I get an SMS 2 days after I'm meant to have paid it, which sort of happens every month. But
I'll put my hand up too. I got my energy bill today. I've got an email here, which I am now 4 weeks late paying. So not that I can't afford to pay the bill, it's just I haven't got to it, right? And so it's been hard to do it. So we're all customers, and we've all got the same expenses to draw on.
Yeah, what you were talking to there, Sean, leads us quite neatly into the next bit, because this is now flipping it around and say, well, okay, if we look at it from a business perspective, and the point for me is everything that you're talking about feels so obvious. It feels so intuitive to say, well, okay, why can't we just make it easy for people? And surely that's a better outcome for us as a business, because then we have less, we have less overdue bills. We're getting the money in, it's easier, there's less chasing, so on and so forth. So, I mean, what challenges are businesses facing in delivering to this? What can they be doing to improve?
Yeah, good question. So, it's whilst we see this as an easy thing to do from an outside, these larger organizations, particularly if they've been around a while, have got often legacy systems that are disconnected. They don't talk to each other. They've got different parts of their businesses that might be operating in silos. Getting that connection in terms of the customer data to all these different touch points is a challenge, right? And so trying to bring all that together in a really seamless way that is delivering a great customer experience it's easier said than done. But ultimately, we talk about this gold standard of the bill payment experience, and delivering consistency across all your channels, providing that secure sense of my personal information is going to be safe. And we've all seen enough of the recent data breaches and things like that are happening. So customers or consumers are very aware now of how they're going about paying these bills. So meeting those expectations is increasingly important across every touch point, giving them the control that we've talked to, but also just making it easier. It's not something that can be entirely in the background, like stepping out of your Uber, and not having to pay the bill anymore, removing that friction. Like, we still need to provide them the opportunities to understand how much the bill is going to cost, and have no shocks in that sense. But still, as I said, like trying to, as an organisation that's got a lot of complexity to it, deliver that seamless experience across every touch point and for every stage of that payment journey. It's not easy, right? And so I think trying to break it down into, you can say, here, let's look at some quick wins. Let's look for opportunities where we can iterate and gradually improve, and not try and do this all in one bite. So I think there's some really, practical kind of ways that organizations can improve and deliver a better experience for their customers, and also for their employees, right? Like, let's not forget that employee experience is really important too, to allow them to do their full job. And some of the tools that have traditionally been at their disposal have not allowed them to do that in an easy way that can meet the changing needs of those customers.
Yeah, I think just picking up on Sean's point too, it's a lot of this isn't, there's a lot of complexity in a biller. Like, if you're a utility or a telco, there's a lot of complexity at the back end, a lot of technology debt, and it's probably easy to lose sight of, the hurdles you have to overcome in order to achieve this real customer-centric needs and wants. I think looking at the research though around, how both different generations are shopping around for better deals, and the fact that the consumers are under pressure, there's research in this paper that talks about the level of loyalty that a consumer has. It's becoming a big thing, right? If you're under a lot of pressure around energy bills, it's a good example, because we know energy prices are up for a whole bunch of external factors. People are shopping around, right? And so we're doing this for Net Promoter Score. We're doing this for all, being digital centric, but there's a real business need to be pushing ahead with this. because customers are out there looking. People that are under pressure are going to shop around for better deals, and the research shows this. And so I think there's a number of reasons why this stuff, there's no question that, getting to a one-click payment and building a great mobile-first experience for paying a bill is, you don't do it overnight. But the reason to do it, I think, has probably never been stronger. And I think the research really draws that out, just, building on what Sean said.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Simon, and Sean, definitely agree as well. I mean, it's funny for me coming at it from a research perspective, and obviously, you think about, applying design principles to it, understanding your customer journey, understanding the pain points, understanding the emotional impact of the actions that you're taking as an organization, and then designing for that to say, well, okay, is there a tech fix that we can put in place? Or if that doesn't exist, well, okay, what other workarounds, what other options do we have? But completely agree, Simon, there with your point. I mean, it's by no means am I intending to make it sound easy. Like, these large organizations, these are complex processes that they're working with, and the legacy of that, makes it hard. But the point is, and Simon, exactly as you were saying there, I mean, whilst there are, there's a number of elements that, when you think about a poor billing experience, the reasons that people give for that tie back into billing, and whether it's inaccuracies, lack of clarity, poor payment processes. But if we think about the outcome of that, ultimately the outcome of that is you lose customers. Of the people we spoke to, just under 2/3 were open to switching, 44% had switched providers, and just under 1/3 of the switchers talk to payment or billing issues as being a trigger for that happening. So, again, there's a lot of risk if you get it wrong. And just seeing, talked about potential areas for improvement. Some of the stuff that I think would be interesting to understand in a bit more detail, potentially around some of the trust signals and some of the ways that we can just help to give people confidence when we're interacting with them.
Maybe, Sean, do you want to pick that one up? And then I'll sort of jump on the back of it, around trust and safety and the role here.
Yeah, for sure. So I think, expanding on that, I mentioned this gold standard of the bill payment process. And so we know that trust is huge in the experience and the way that it will instill a customer to not just pay the bill, but to your point, remain loyal to that brand, right? Like, if you are uncomfortable with something in terms of the way that you are, providing information, or you're feeling like you're not being treated with the level that you need to feel safe in today's environment with your information, you're going to look for an alternative, competitive environment, and you will vote with your feet. And so I think when you look about the way that, a biller experience might, improve, and one of the reasons why we, really value the partnership with PayPal, like we see, and it's well known, the PayPal wallet as one example, it's a trust signal, right? Like my wife, as an example, whenever she shops, if the choice is there to pay via PayPal on any e-commerce site, she uses it because she knows that her information is secure and she can get her money back if anything went wrong with that merchant. And so it's the same in the biller environment, right? Like, you get a communication from a biller saying pay your bill, not just the potential flexibility of if pay in full was an option in that environment, but just knowing that my information's secure is hugely important. But that's just one layer that we talk to in these trust signals of this communication. So the experience should look the part, fully branded. There shouldn't be a third party, in my opinion, in there in terms of, installing an app and, paying through a different means to pay a biller. It should be a really seamless experience. You should have a sense that, this is a secure portal or, form or whatever way that the payment's coming through. And so it can be, an SSL certificate on the URL, no bit.ly links, the right information, the right context of messaging. They're all just layers that are super important in what that end experience comes through as, and gives that customer that sense that this is an experience that I feel comfortable with. And these guys as an organization, have a respect for my information as a consumer too, because getting it wrong can be hugely stressful, and with all the information that goes online from a result of those, breaches, or paying the wrong merchant or whatever it might be.
Yeah, and I think from a PayPal perspective, as you know, Ben, from the e-com index we run every year. In this last year, it's been a couple of years since we've had some very high profile, security issues in Australia, I think we could call them. But even in the last year, 73% of consumers said they're more concerned about their data and their security than they were last year. So there's heightened awareness from consumers. In online retail, we sort of talk about, collecting too much information adds friction, means you don't get the sale. But in a billing environment, adding more information that you want, or having people having to rekey, credit card numbers in, or having to rekey passwords in, or things like that, they're not just adding friction, but they're also things that consumers are increasingly thinking about is, where am I, if, I've had to add my credit card number again, or entering my credit card becomes something that people start to get a bit nervous about, right? So I think as part of that whole package around improving, bill collection and bill payment, I do think that whole trust and safety thing is, it's become more important than it ever was.
Absolutely. I mean, I mentioned before, some of the words or the themes that keep coming through there. I mean, it's control, it's clarity, it's consent, it's all those elements of okay, well, I understand what I'm getting into. I have this relationship with the merchant, and I say something. And some of the themes that we see coming through in the e-commerce research, it's an interesting time given the number of data breaches we've had, and it's almost for consumers, given the scale of them, a lot of consumers, your data is out there, and so then you're trusting the merchants that you deal with and the companies that you deal with to have systems in place that you can still transact with them safely. And whether it be two-factor authentication, whether it be the smart systems they've got running behind the scenes, you have no visibility of. But it's critical for that to be there. The expectation is that's there to ensure that you can keep operating safely. Doesn't make it easy for a merchant, but I guess that's what consumers are looking for. But I mean, with that and a lot of the improvements, and actually, I mean, Sean, I think some of the pieces you were talking to there are more around the sort of tech innovations and probably what's being worked on at the moment. And the main theme I probably took away from some of the earlier points you were making is that billing does feel like it's been left a bit by the wayside, and that the work is happening now to try and catch up, to try and bring it more in line with other parts of the e-commerce industry. Given that, I mean, businesses obviously need to be building for the future. What trends do you see coming that are going to help them better deliver to the needs of their customers, deliver better experiences in the future? Sean, I'll start with you, and then Simon, you can jump in and add probably, based on what you're seeing in the PayPal business there.
Yeah. So Ben, a couple of your comments there around those expectations and the trends. The thing is that consumers, no matter who you are as an organization, your customers are being trained by the likes of Uber, Facebook, all these businesses that are delivering great digital experiences. And so their expectations in what they are getting from anyone that they're engaging with has been lifted up. And so you need to meet those expectations, right? And so those future trends, as I said, it can be any type of industry, but your customers largely are seeing that and wanting that from you as well. And so this extends into that biller environment. And to your point, I think it has been, in a lot of the transformation projects and whatnot, under invested or under prioritized area. There's some organizations that are doing it pretty well, and others that, there's clearly room for improvement. In terms of what those future trends might be, I think consumers will demand and expect some of that from you, but ultimately it doesn't necessarily need to be a technology that's driving it. It's just the experience in terms of consistency and their ability to pay a bill across any of your touch points in the way that they choose to, right? And so that can be a challenge for an organization, as I said before, if they're operating still largely in silos and having these disparate systems to allow someone who, for example, they might have, as an organisation, expected someone to call in between 9 to 5 because that's when we're open and that's when they can pay their bill. Whereas, I might work all day in some kind of job where I can't make a phone call and pay you. So I need to do that after hours, but I actually want to call someone to talk about this. And so, giving that consistent experience through the contact center, through it might be, a web chat environment, and that web chat could be largely powered by chatbots that are intelligent enough to have, these conversations and to resolve that bill because the data's there in that part of the organisation as well, out of the billing type ERP or wherever it might be held. I think those future trends is for an organisation just becoming more consistent in the way that they can, through all those touch points, provide that great experience. In terms of some other, technologies that are coming down the line, for us, we see SMS by far and away as a channel is the most efficient way to collect a bill payment, right? Despite all the concerns around things like spam and whatnot, spam and scams it's a digital issue, right? Like it's not like it's confined to one channel. SMS seems to get a lot of, exposure and discussion around the concerns. But the reality is, these scams can happen in any environment or across any touch point. People are getting phone calls, people are engaging with websites, etc. I guess one of the exciting things that we're seeing is this new technology called RCS, Rich Communication Services. The actual technology's been around for 10 odd years. It's a Google innovation, but Apple had for many years resisted adopting it into their own operating system. Spring, this is going to be being released in every OS update globally from Apple. Now, that might take a little while for the telcos to be able to support this, but it's been coined as SMS 2.0. And so we're going to see some great improvements around the verification and the reliability that this communication is coming from, the telco or the insurer, that this is the right message. And there's a lot more you can do in there in terms of creating a rich experience. And so that's something we're really excited about at Glider. We think it's going to drive even further the uplift of that channel and the conversion rates and the importance of it in your communications or payment communication strategies. And then tying in things like personalisation, like AI and bringing through, as I said, like this in terms of your strategy, talking to someone on a one-to-one basis, not one size fits all. And so leveraging data and insights around payment behaviours to continue to improve the way that you're reaching out, and talking to someone across the right channel, the right moment, the right time of day with the best experience. And so bringing those things together. And I think the great leveler really is that it doesn't matter if you're a $5 billion a year organisation or you're a $10 million organisation, the tools that everyone's using are largely there, right? And so to a degree, you could accelerate past some of these legacies, organizations, because you don't have some of those challenges of connecting all the dots behind the scenes. And so, I think one of the great opportunities here is, seeing how fast this can evolve. But as I said, it's great now that these tools are basically available to any organization as well. So those experiences can be amazing for a consumer with anyone they're engaging with.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the democratization of a lot of those platforms, I mean, that's a massive shift in the industry. Simon, what else do you think?
Well, look, Sean's the technology guru, so he's got a real close handle on that. I think where I see a lot of this around execution, right? Which is, I think, with things like AI, chatbots, like the communication channels that are there, I think we're going to see those broadly pervasive in the billing industry. But I think how you bring it together, go back to the research, how do you bring it together so that when you have the attention, can I capture the payment with one click, right? So from my perspective, if we could tie it together nicely, I feel like that's the next step. that sort of harnesses, whether it's AI or whether it's, new channels or SMS 2.0, come back to that concept of, making it easy or giving the customer control with one click. I think that's what's right in front of us at the moment. The trust and safety one is a big one, right? And I do think that, it's just one of those areas that is going to continue to be something that consumers are really, really focused on. And that's an area, obviously, PayPal, we pride ourselves, on that. But it is something that I think is going to factor very much into the future, from a billing perspective. The last thing I would sort of say is, this sort of focus on the end-to-end customer journey. And I think, what's clear from the research is people are changing providers. People are shopping around, and typically the younger they are, the more they're shopping around, right? And so I think, really looking at the funnel in terms of, there's a lot more competitors in the market in most of these industries, and they're doing partnership deals, like sign up for a new energy plan, together with some other product that they might buy. And so really thinking about that funnel, thinking it through, how do I make this thing completely frictionless? And the billing experience is a really important part of that. If I get an energy offer as part of some other purchase, it's cost the energy company money to be as part of that offer. But how do I make sure I can convert that customer? And that whole billing setup is a really important part of it. Likewise, the customer journey for your existing customers, knowing that you're out trying to take someone else's consumer, someone's trying to take your consumer. So how have we thought through, how all that technology and innovation comes together to make sure that, we're not giving people reasons to leave. We're making, we're satisfying the consumer from a loyalty perspective and giving them what they want. So there's probably not a lot that's earth-shattering there, but I do think pulling those basics together using the technology we see in front of us and the channels we see in front of us is what I think sort of short-term focus should be.
Excellent. Thank you. And yes, absolutely agree. It's there's a lot of times where it's easy to feel that as an existing customer, you're almost less valuable to a company than an acquisition, a conquest, a new customer. And so, again, potentially something that feels a bit out of kilter. All right, huge amount of ground that we've covered there. Just capping back on, and again, some of the points that I've been jotting down for myself and taking notes away for myself. A fantastic conversation here. But we started off with the consumer findings, what we saw in the research, talking to the importance of control, talking to how for many Australians, bills are now part of their day-to-day life, as against something that gets done over here. And so how do we deliver to that? How do we enable that? Sean, I think you talked really nicely there with the human-centered design principles, the idea of right time, right channel, right message. I think that's something that really resonated with me. From a B2B perspective, the challenge of legacy systems. And so it is hard to deliver a gold standard because you're just constrained by the environment that you're operating in. And so whilst work is being done, we do need to recognize how hard this is. And it is changing, but it will take time. And so that led us into the conversation around the future and some of the, not necessarily new technologies, but technologies that are now being applied to billing in new ways. And so we are seeing a shift there, and we will see tech that enables, greater consistency, greater personalization. But the challenge is that, again, Sean, as you were saying, the customer's been trained on the Ubers of the world. And so their expectations, that's a really high bar that you've got to deliver to. But the key point, and Simon, where you ended off there, which I think was fantastic, was that then it comes down to the execution. It comes down to being able to deliver on what you're saying you're going to do, being able to do that consistently across your customers. And so I think that was a really nice point to finish up on. So before we finish up for good, though, just a minute there. Any last thoughts, Simon? Anything you want to throw in before we finish?
No, just what you've already recapped, Ben. I do think the consumers are feeling it. It's an opportunity and a threat. It's something that billers need to be really conscious of. And as PayPal, we're here to support the billing industry in Australia and globally around meeting some of these consumer challenges.
Excellent, thank you. And Sean?
Yeah, look, as I said, I think that there's some exciting kind of opportunities in this area. maybe I'm a bit weird getting excited about bill payments, but we are really passionate about it here at Glider. We think on this mission of making it that experience better, not just for the organisation and collecting a bill, but it can be stressful for the consumer. And so trying to improve that from their perspective, I think, there's some good opportunities that are not too hard to get to in terms of providing a better experience. And so this research that we completed with Fifth Quadrant, really it's great to shine the light on some of these opportunities. And I guess, the only thing I'd say is, look, we've covered at a high level some of these insights, but there is a really in-depth and insightful report that you could download and spend some time reviewing. No matter if you're a large or small organisation, I think there's some value in there for everyone. And so on the Glider website, you could head over to the website and download that.
Perfect, thank you. And yes, absolutely. If you do one thing after listening to this, go download the report, have a read of that, get into the detail of it. For now, though, thank you very much for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, Ben.
Cheers.